All properties.
Yeah. I mean,
Yes, I mean whatever the instance variable of that object are, that has to be permanently made final.
okay.
If there is some static kind of thing, then for that I think we can ignore. I mean, because that is not specific to object, but at class level. So static thing we can ignore, and the instance thing we have to mandatorily make it final.
Sorry. So what type of design patterns you have used?
So I mean, as such, we didn't find any case like that. One, I would say, we have defined a factory for one of the situation. Uh, then because we are using Spring everywhere, so Singleton is coming by default whenever we define a bean there. Uh, then I would say, as we are using annotation, so that is kind of a decorator type of design pattern. Yeah, I mean, when we are trying to get a connection for a DB, so that is kind of a factory itself. We are passing the class name and type, and so it is providing us the object there. So yeah, that way we have used. So external, I mean, we haven't made as such specific to our project. So whatever existing other they will we are using.
Uh, so what is the difference between factory and abstract factory design pattern?
Abstract factory design pattern. I'm sorry, not sure on this. Sorry.
Okay. So can you tell me about factory, how it works? I
Okay,
mean, you have
factory.
like worked on factory design pattern, right?
Yes, yes. So factory is like, I mean, we let's say there's a parent and there are two or three multiple multiple inheriting extending objects are there, extending classes, and we during the prior itself we don't know which particular object has to be created. So for that purpose we will create a factory. We will pass the type of the class. Let's say we will give a class name there, and within the factory method, the get instance method, we can define our logic like whatever. Let's say compare it with the type, and if the type is a, then create an object of a class and return it and share it in the parent reference. Or if the type is b, like the user is expecting a b type of class, then we'll create a b class. We'll create an object of b class and then return it into the reference of parent one. So the parent will be same. We just have to pass the type of object we need, and internally that will create the object and return it back. Instead of we creating the new, the factory will create it and give it back.
Okay. So have you like do you have knowledge about Singleton?
Sorry.
Singleton.
Yes, Singleton is like only once the object will be instantiated, and every time whenever we are calling, we are trying to create that object, the same object will be returned back. So again, we will have to, you know, within the implementation of it. I mean, uh, we will have to restrict the new object creation, and we will check if the reference is already holding a pre-existing object, then return the same thing again instead of creating new one. So in that way we can implement singleton.
Okay, so in Singleton, you can have only single instance of that object, right?
Yes, yes.
I mean single object. So what I want to do, I want to clone that object by the
Okay,
clone method, and
okay.
if I clone it, that time you will have the same object again.
Right.
Yeah. So is there any way you can restrict it? Because it can break the singleton design pattern
Yes, yes,
easily.
I got your point. I mean, yeah, using the clone we are creating again one more object here.
Yeah.
So how do we restrict it? Sorry, I'm not sure. I haven't implemented it, so I cannot
Okay. Okay. No problem.
just
Yeah.
just that answer.
So can you tell me how you can avoid the deadlock situation in your code?
So deadlock mostly, mm, in a multi-threaded environment, I mean, so one way is like using the new executor frameworks. I guess we can define for what time period we can allow a thread to access an object, lock the object. So if that time frame is given, let's say 5 seconds, for 5 seconds only an object can hold a lock to it, and after that he will have to release it, then I think it will break that deadlock.
If there is deadlock occurring in your code or not?
Okay, sorry, I mean, in our projects in my experience of 8 years, I have never implemented any thread kind of thing. I mean, our projects never.
Okay, that's fine. Yeah.
So we are into training and learning projects, so there is no as such requirement of multi-threaded environment.
Yeah. Okay. So can you tell me what is the difference between creating a string using a new keyword or a literal?
Okay, if we use the literal, it will create a space in the string constant pool, and if we use a new, it will search in the constant pool, and it will create and it's a mandatory condition that we have to create it in a heap also, when it in respect to the new operator. And if it is a string literal, then we can point to the string constant pool itself.
Okay. And do you have experience or knowledge in Spring MVC?
Yes.
So what are the benefits of using Spring MVC?
Spring MVC benefits. So first thing is, it is giving us a framework here. So first is dependency injection. So instead of we tightly coupling everything in our code, we are giving that responsibility back to the Spring container. So it will create the objects for us, and whenever we require, it will get into the Spring context, and we can pull from there. Then it will act as an inversion of control also. I mean, instead of we having the taking control of creating the objects, we are passing the responsibility to Spring. Then Spring is giving a lot of support around the development. Like we can go with AOPs are also there, and Spring MVC. What else I would say? So if we are creating a strictly Spring MVC application, then it will help us to bind the JSPs and the data model. So there Spring MVC help us to render that thing. And
okay.
Yeah, that's pretty much.
Okay, no problem. Okay. So there is a thing called service layer we use. Service layer. So what is the purpose of having service layer?
Okay, service layer is like performing our business logic on whatever the data we get from the repository layer. So repository, so let's say we have divided the entire flow of backend an API into 3 sections: the controller layer, service layer, and the repository layer. So repository is strictly bound only to get the data or push the data to database. Similarly, the controller is only allowed to get the request or send the request back to the HTTP or any format changes. But the actual business logic is something which has to be implemented in the service class itself. So for that purpose, we use service.
Okay, so there is a annotation called request param.
Yes.
So do you know where exactly we use it and why?
Okay, so that's for query param. In the URL itself, we are passing the data like a question mark. Let's say the A equals to hello. So in that in case, I mean, we have to get that variable A and its value. So for that, we will use in request param. Will parts it will be declared as a in signature of that method itself. So we have to give @request param, then inverted brackets, give the type of the ID. Let's say you're passing a name, then we'll keep it as a name. Then we'll assign a variable to it. so that whatever comes in after question mark, name equals to, let's say, Ashish. So then Ashish will be mapped to that string object there.
Okay.
If it's a path variable, then we'll use path slash. After slash, we are passing any directly the name, then we'll use path variable there.
Okay. So, do you have knowledge about Spring AOP?
Spring AOP, theoretically I have, but we haven't implemented anything. So I would say it can be used for logging purpose, or at times using advices. We can have exception handling. We can perform using that. So AOP will help us whatever the other than the main logic, whatever extra features, whatever extra functionality we will have to work, that can be delegated to AOPs.
Okay. Okay.
Instead of we writing, but we haven't implemented. But
Yeah. Must have used Maven.
yes.
Okay. So, what problem does Maven solves?
So
Because nowadays
first thing is, the major problem for all the developers is getting the dependencies. So jar files. So let's say we don't use Maven, we are using a normal project. So every time we will have to go and download a jar, then add it to the class path manually. So what Maven is helping us, they have given a repository, they have uploaded all their jars there. We can just use the dependency tags, whatever we have, artifact, group ID, or the dependency. So, and we can use it in our param.xml, and Maven will fetch those jars from Maven repository and add it to our build path instead of we doing it manually every time. And if there is a version change, so we can simply go and change the version number in the param.xml, and that will help. Otherwise, we would have to download it and again put it to class path.
So, have you used Kafka or ActiveMQ, anything?
Okay, so Kafka we are using in project, but we are not the producers. We are just a consumer. So as I said, we have a Elasticsearch implementation. So that's a different team. So what they do is, they have given us a API, Kafka API. So we have to push all the objects into that Kafka, and they will index it in this search, and they will return us a acknowledgement kind of thing. So we are a consumer, but not a we haven't created it. We are not the producer.
Okay, so how you are testing your Kafka consumers?
Consumers, how we are testing?
Yeah.
We make a call to it. They have given a lot of features like that. There's something like as offset is there, then the actual URL is there, then 1, 2, 3 more features. Parameters are there, and we did one-time setup for that. And whenever we hit that API, if there is any response, we get it, or we normally get the response as either in progress or completed in that way. So based on that logic, we have implemented. I'm not sure testing of it.
Okay. So, are you writing test cases for your code?
Yes, basic functionality we are writing, and for normal functions, so which are not dependent on other things, purely logic kind of thing. So that we are doing more often. And for 1 or 2 scenarios, we have used mock to mock the DAO layer to test the service functionality. So yeah, to be frank, in Cisco there's not much culture of focusing on test cases more. We write just to get the test coverage a bit up, numbers.
But don't you think it's a bad approach? Because
yes, that's yes, that is a bad
test
approach.
Cases are must for.
Yes.
The clients are focusing on test cases nowadays.
Yes.
Not nowadays. It's been a culture.
Right. Yes, and yeah, I completely agree. I'm telling what we do in our thing.
Okay, so yeah, you can test your Kafka consumer and in fact any functionality by
Yes.
mocking the response. That's what you do.
Yes.
You just mock the response. You just
Yes.
whatever you are, you just give the data and
Right.
whatever you are expecting from it, you can mock it.
You can
And
mock it. Yeah.
if that is matching to your
Yes.
code, I mean
Yes.
output of the your code or functionality, then test case is
Right.
working fine.
Yes. Yes.
So,
Correct.
I mean, are you not maintaining any what you call this sonar cube or
Code coverage thing, right?
code coverage thing? Yeah.
Yes, I mean there is. I mean, very frequently we don't do. I mean, there's a system in place in Cisco, so every yearly once they will do that review. So that setup,
Yearly.
yes, yearly.
Yeah. After a year, it will be a lot of pain because uh, uh,
Yeah, yeah, I understand. I mean, that's how.
even developers can't tell what they have written a month ago. I mean, that's just the fact nowadays. You can't
Right,
tell
right.
1 month ago's code how you implemented it and what is the thing you can remove and what is not.
Yes, yes, yes.
So I mean, auditing happens once in a year, once in a 6 month. That is
Yes.
fine. Auditing is fine, but I don't know.
I mean, I'm just saying. I mean, what's the culture here? That's what I've
Oh,
experienced.
it's okay. It's fine.
And we have
So
a Baba scan. So Baba scan is every 6 months. So that will help us to check the vulnerabilities and that will fix.
oh, so how you are managing exceptions in your Spring Boot application? Handling exceptions in Spring Boot application.
Okay. So actually there are two ways we can handle. So one is like in our application, what we have done is like we created our own custom response object. So in that we have object of so whatever data we have to send to the UI rate. So for that we have created a object type, and we have two variables like message and status. So whenever exception occurs, so we will catch that in catch block, and there we assign whatever the message or exception is. So that's one way to do it. Second way is using the controller advice. I mean, we can create a global exception class, and that global exception will handle all the exceptions throughout our service layers. So that we can do. I mean,
Okay. Okay, fine. Uh, have you used controller advice or anything on the
yeah, I mean, in our project we haven't, but that's the concept.
Okay.
One with Go. I mean, I'm telling what we have done in our
Yeah,
project.
yeah.
So we haven't. We keep it manual kind of thing. I mean, we created our own custom objects and we handle it in catch block.
So are you using REST or REST I mean,
Yes.
you are using service oriented architecture, right?
Yes.
So is there is this REST based or SOAP based or
REST. Everything is
REST?
REST based.
Okay. Okay. So can you use get method to create a resource?
Create a resource using get method. Yes, I mean get is nothing but I mean just to call a method, and let's say in the API itself we have written some logic to dynamically create an object. So that is going to create the resource,
Uh,
even though we don't pass
ca-
anything.
can
But
you
within
pass
the
something with the get method? Any
passing anything, uh, we cannot pass. I guess I mean in the implementation part we can do any logic kind of thing, but in using the URL itself, I think.
So to
Okay.
create a resource,
Yes.
uh, I mean you have to pass the details as well.
So in the HTTP request itself, if we are putting some header kind of thing and we are adding that value there, and in API we are pulling that value, though it's a get API call, but in the HTTP request, if you set some header from UI and you are taking that header here and trying to do that work, in that way we can do. But I guess purely by
Okay.
without passing any data in URL, we won't be able to create.
Okay.
Kind of a hack we can use. We set some HTTP headers there. based on that we'll do.
Okay, so I think by the get you can't create a resource. You can create a resource with the post only. But anyways, we'll check about that.
Okay.
The other thing is testing your RESTful web services. I mean, you are not writing test cases, that is fine. But while developing, you must have testing it simultaneously that
Yes,
your resource is working or not. So how do
right.
you do that?
We have Postman. We use Postman.
Okay.
We to call the API, push the data.
Okay. And any multi-threading environment you are using?
Multi-threading. I mean, there's no as such need in our projects.
Okay.
No, multi-threading is not available.
Okay.
One case I would say, okay, so in one of the scenarios, we have a job which is pulling data from web servers and trying to process and send it to search. So there we have two different data centers. So we have pushed that data, I mean that logic to two different data centers. So they parallelly try to work execute. So for that we have used a executor framework. I mean, we have done that setup. I'm not sure exactly, but using quad scheduler we have set up that, and within the quad scheduler we have used to handle this multi-threaded kind of situation. Like
Okay.
if two threads are coming from both the data centers, at that time what we have to do, which one to be given priority, so in that way.
Okay. Okay. Fine. Other than that, sorry. So
Yeah.
in data side, what type of these databases you have worked?
The Oracle.
Oracle.
Yeah, and during my initial days for a year time, I've used MySQL. Both
Okay.
are lying on SQL only. I mean, pure SQL.
Or on the Java side, what type of JPA you are using?
Currently, I mean, in our the present applications, we are using JDBC, Spring JDBC, and I have worked on Hibernate during my initial days. I mean, pure Hibernate, not JPA. Hibernate I've used.
Okay. Okay. Fine. So while using Spring JDBC, right?
Yes. Yes.
Uh, can you can you know the process of using the default? I mean, not default. The custom uh, these queries.
Custom query. So I mean, basically, what I do, I mean, in our project is like if you want to get a single record, we'll use JDBC template and basics JDBC simple JDBC template, and we have a method like query for object. So we use that, or in case we have to get a multiple records, then we'll use query, and we have row mapper there, and we create our custom query and pass that. So these two value we pass it. So that will automatically pull the data, and using the row mapper, I'll get the list of data.
Okay. Okay. Fine. Okay. So I think I have done